I have a number of thank yous I'd like to make before I begin my address tonight. The first is to young Jeff Mayer. This man has organized this dinner for us, over 400 people sitting in this hall, and he does so with the most incredible passion for the school and for the Old Boys Association and everything it stands for. We've had 100 years of these dinners, and it's not true that Jeff organized all of them, but he's certainly organized a hell of a lot of them. And Jeff, to you, thank you very much indeed. And then my thanks to the chairman of the Old Boys Association, to Jason Webber, who addressed the school in this hall yesterday on the occasion of our Founders Assembly. And if there are any old boys, there's always an open invitation to a Friday assembly. To any old boy, your families, you want to come along and just see what it's like on a Friday, you're most welcome to come to assembly. But I'd urge you to try and make the Friday assembly of Founders Day or the Founders Weekend. We try and make a weekend of it. So the Friday before the Old Boys dinner is our Founders Day at school, and we have a special assembly that Friday, and I urge you to be there. And yesterday, Jason addressed the boys on his first impressions that he got and how important first impressions were, and the yellow lights in the school and how those made such an impression on him. And then I had to tell him that when we remodeled the place, we forgot to put the yellow lights in. And we were reminded by another old boy called Harry Todd, which many of you know. He said, "Where's the yellow lights?" And I went to John and I said, "We've forgotten something." Anyway, the yellow lights are back there again, and those of you who've been to assembly will know the kind of this seething mass of humanity that descends upon the hall, these testosterone-laden teenage boys who are incredibly noisy, and then about 1.2 seconds later, it's complete silence. And that is an incredible impression on people, and it was certainly one that Jason spoke about yesterday. And thank you for being such a special, thank you for making our assembly yesterday so special. My thanks to James as well for his role as the MC tonight. It's been my privilege to have worked with James these last couple of years, and he has this delightful combination of a fairly dry sense of humor coupled with some serious things that he's told us about tonight that have been fascinating. And the amount of research that he did for tonight is remarkable. I don't know how much marking he's done, and we are in exam session at the moment, so he won't be joining you afterwards at the Old Boys Club because he's going to go back to mark. Yeah. Well, that's what he told me. But my thanks to him. And then my thanks, and it was an absolute pleasure, and it really was a pleasure to catch up with Greg again. And part of my very wonderful task tonight is not only to address you, but also to thank the various people. And Greg Hassenkamp's contribution to the school has been phenomenal. Perhaps not so much as a boy. Apart from his accolades on the rugby field and various other things, and the holes that he drilled in ceilings and things. And it was interesting, I not only did Ryan O'Donoghue, but all the other boarding house masters started going a little shade of white, and so I think, okay, when I'm in my bath tonight, I'm looking up, I'm going to see what's up there. I even thought of doing it in my house, and my house is a single-story house, but anyway. But Greg, it was great to catch up with you. Greg, there was a piece written about him in one of the Old Boys newsletters, and Greg has been a phenomenal success at Hermanus High School, as we knew he would. He's taken that school to different places. He has just been a wonderful, he's a wonderful educator. He's wonderful with young people, and the stories that he told us tonight were also wonderful. There is one story. I'd been in office for about a year, I think, and I was tidying up one of my cupboards in my study, and there was this famous book, and in this book, all headmasters were required to write whenever they gave jacks to any boys. And so I paged through it, and the names didn't mean much to me until I got to the late 80s. And there, young Hassenkamp's name featured a number of times. So Greg knew the inside of the headmaster's study for a number of reasons, and perhaps not so good in the beginning. But Greg and his family have settled very nicely in Omanus, and it is wonderful. Greg, thank you very much for giving us such a wonderful, wonderful address tonight. And then I also believe, while it's not quite 1:15, it is 11:15, which means that I think the Champions League is over. I was told, reliably informed by Glenn Corlett, that I would not be listened to tonight if I waffled on too long, because he was going to be watching the Champions League final on his phone. And if he cheered, it wasn't going to be as a result of something I said. It was going to be a result of Liverpool scoring a goal. So I'm pleased that that is now over, and I can address you very shortly on a couple of things about the school. Thank you very much for inviting me again to the annual dinner, and made even more special by this occasion being the 100th such occasion. But I also want to add to what Jason said, and that is to acknowledge, I think for the first time in our history as an association, that we acknowledge the role through the inviting of female teachers to our annual dinner. If you look back, there are so many reunions that I go to, and when the reunion organizers speak of the impact that teachers had on them, without a doubt and without exception, there's a female teacher in there as well, who's made an enormous impact on the boys of the school and on you. And I think it's wonderful that not only does the association acknowledge all of our teachers, male and female, but also our support staff as well, when it comes to membership or honorary membership of the association for their contribution to the school, but also that we've invited a number of the female teachers who taught many of you are here tonight. One of them, who has a slightly mischievous sense of humor, said to me that she was going to come to the dinner tonight with a t-shirt. And on that t-shirt it would say, "No, I'm not the stripper." I challenge you to find out who it was. Ladies and gentlemen, just a brief report on the school from my side. The school, I feel, continues to flourish in so many areas. Most importantly, and this I'm so pleased that Greg alluded to as well, in the young men who leave us every year to go out into the world. I'm incredibly proud of them, and as I get older in this job, so I see more of those who have been in the last 9 years attending these dinners, and I'm incredibly proud of all of you, but in particular the boys that I made some connection with while you were at school. They represent such a wide range of interests and abilities, and I'm so proud of them. The academic results of the school continue to impress. The pass rate of the past 9 years, which is what I've researched on, averages 99.2%. The bachelor rate, which indicates the percentage of the school that may make application to university, averages 88.6% in the same period of time, which is not bad for a school that matriculates 300 boys every year. And for a school that has a subject choice, and this is the part that I keep trying to get across to people. It's all very well to look at schools who are boasting about 100% pass rates all the time and high bachelor rates, and you say, well, what percentage of your kids take pure mathematics, for example? What percentage of yours take pure physical or take physical sciences? And we have just on 90% of our class takes pure mathematics, and around 85% take physical sciences. The extramural program continues to work well and to go well. There are various sporting and cultural pursuits that offer opportunities to so many boys. Our sporting program is strong and our boys perform well, and you would have seen just a small glimpse of our music department, part of our cultural thing on offering here that was on display tonight. And William, to you and to the team that did that, it was absolutely magnificent. Thank you very much indeed. In those areas in our sporting program where we've battled, we've put plans in place to improve, which we've communicated to people, and the efforts in those places are starting to become noticed. And then it was with great joy that we have taken on a 15th sport. Many of you know that we have been trialing football or soccer for the last 2 years to see how it worked and to see whether we could play soccer as part of our activity against traditional schools and to play soccer in the way that Boys High plays sport. And we're delighted that it's worked out very well indeed. And so soccer has been accepted as a fully fledged sport at Boys High with its own uniform. And our boys will be eligible for colours and various other things along with every other sport at the school. The school grounds are magnificent. This is one of the most beautiful schools, I think, in the world. And it remains a pleasure to be part of such a beautiful working environment. The business side of school these days, unfortunately, is a very important part of the school, and it's running well, despite the economic pressures currently in our country. But just to give you some perspective on the size of the operation, our annual budget is around 123 million rand, and of that, we receive 22.3 million rand from government. The rest comes in terms of school fees. So our salaries of just over half a teaching staff of around 100 are paid for by the state, and we receive a small grant per boy, which totals that 22.3 million, and as a percentage of our budget, it's around 18% of what it costs to run Boys High. You may recall that in order to complete the building project, this hall was paid for out of donations from very kind people, such as many of you sitting here tonight, and with the wonderful efforts of Bill Schroeder as the fundraiser-in-chief. And we opened this magnificent place, and it really is a hall that every time I walk into it and take assembly, I'm so proud of this facility. But the Schroeder Centre behind us, that we had to borrow 14 million rand in order to complete that, and I'm delighted to report that at the end of next year, that loan will be fully paid off. And as a result of prudent management, we've also been able to accumulate the necessary funds to replace our AstroTurf hockey surface, and that process is going to start in August this year at a cost of just around 4 million rand. Talking of money, we do have families, though, that battle, and they battle to cover the cost of fees, and we've begun a rather ambitious bursary program through the Praetorian Trust to try and realize our dream of initially supporting 150 boys, or 10% of the school. And if you are in any way approached or able to contribute or help, there's a lady called Jamie Lee Fisher who's sending out emails at the moment. Please read them. Please don't just delete them. There are a number of families out there that are in need of financial assistance and would greatly benefit from your help. In terms of admissions to Boys High, that admissions process, as many as you know by now, is now done by the Gauteng Department of Education online and is based now on proximity to the school in terms of residence, on where people live, which is interesting in that it is exactly what it was 40 years ago. So the wheel has turned full circle. 40 years ago, you could come to Boys High if you lived within what was then called the feeder zone of the school, and exactly the same process has happened now. There are there is provision made for those who have siblings at the school, and there's provision made along a sort of third list of those who work in the area, and it continues to be a battle to try and get the GDE to understand how special schools like this are and how important it is that the children of old boys and grandchildren of old boys and brothers of old boys are able to continue the legacy that was left. And so we've battled really hard with this, and it is a fight that we will continue to fight, because we think it's important. We think it's about the backbone of the school, is for a son and a father to share something in common, and that is the experience that they have at Boys High. So we're currently in negotiations with the GDE to try and to get them to understand the uniqueness of monastic schools and why we should be treated differently within obvious confines of the legislation. I know many of you are aware that I'm going to be leaving Boys High in July 2020 to take up a new position at a small school in Cape Town. This was an extremely difficult decision to make, as my family and I have thoroughly enjoyed our time at Boys High. But after 10 years, I felt that the time was right for my final posting before retiring. The process of finding a suitable replacement to lead Boys High into the future has already begun, and we are 100% confident that the governing body will find the right person. This process is fully supported by the GDE, who have assured us of their support along the way, and I am confident that it will work out well. And so, gentlemen, finally, the number 100. It is significant in so many areas, and we celebrate our 100th dinner here tonight. For many, 100, if you put it as a percentage, represents the perfect score that we're always striving towards and the target that we aim at. For our cricketers, the number 100 represents a noteworthy achievement as a batsman. For our golfers, the number 100 is one best avoided. And yet, as one takes up the game, and I still remember the day, and I've played, I hope, some decent golf in my life, but I still remember the first time that I broke 100 as a golfer, and I'm sure many of you golfers will remember that 100 is a significant number. Why, I don't know. No one ever remembers who scores 99 in a test match, but they'll remember the person who scores 100. I always felt sorry for the person who scores 99. But 100 is an impressive number. And 100 as part of an organization, I love James's stories of the Old Boys Association branched into Brook. I was just wondering if I get an invitation to go there and go and speak at a meeting, if that branch still exists. But for an organization as this school to reach 118 years this year is remarkable. However, let's just put it in perspective. We have a relationship with a small school in London, or in England, called Eton College. Eton College is 579 years old. The oldest teaching or recorded teaching institution is the University of Carouine in Morocco. It's 1,160 years old this year. There's schools in Italy that are over 900 years old as formal established teaching structures. But informal education is as old as we know as humankind itself. South African schools, not too bad. Muir College in Newtonhague, Wynberg Boys and Paul Roos, Saxon Bishops are the schools that are considered the oldest of schools like ours. And Muir College, Wynberg and Paul Roos are around 197 years old. But I mention these numbers because I think that despite us being relative teenagers in this company, I think we have significance in our 118 years. And in this milestone of 100 dinners that we've reached tonight, which I think is almost more important, because it shows that those 118 years had some influence on those boys that were here that caused them to come back to dinners. These schools that I mentioned before and ours have contributed significantly to our country and the world at large, and our influence must never be underestimated. That influence for the good has resulted in applications to this school far exceeding capacity every year. We have about 310 places at the school each year in the new Form 1 intake. There are around 66 boarders, and last year there were 1,400 applications for the 250 day boy spaces left. This year, after about 8 days in the process, we have just under 1,200 and then another 4 weeks of applications to go. Parents are desperate to get their sons into the school because they acknowledge and realize the significance of the school and the influence. Not that we can help every recalcitrant child, but we do help most, and we help most become the best versions of themselves that they can be. And so I conclude by exhorting you never to underestimate the significance of Boys High and its influence it had on you and on our world. Don't spend time and energy, don't waste your time and energy bemoaning small and insignificant issues and challenges along the way, but celebrate the greatest triumphs the school has, the development of balanced, well-rounded, good human beings who go on to themselves influence others. And so I wish you all the best. We will not be around to celebrate the bicentennial dinner, and Jeff won't have to organize it. But I have no doubt that this fine school and the Old Boys Association will be and will still represent everything that we've held so dear for so long. Thank you, gentlemen.